Most often, artists who produce what people would call their greatest work of their career suffer from their own legacy. They are always trying to top the best work that they have done, and not all of them are successful. It doesn't seem to apply to Iko, I think. A lot of people would say that his best work is The Raid, which is actually the very first movie that he starred in. I may agree. I think this is the Raid. He, of course, he has a long career ahead of him, but so far I would also consider The Raid to be his best work. But Iko doesn't seem to compete against his best work. He seems to compete against himself now. And that is what is allowing him to create great movies like Headshot. Headshot has a very unique treatment in the fight scenes. Headshot didn't seem to even make an attempt to follow the legacy of The Raid. It didn't try to make a better version of The Raid. It was just different. The fighting style is different, the choreography is different, and even the entire situation, the entire universe, and the entire environment of the movie is also different. So different that it is almost unfair to compare the two. Number one, in Headshot, Iko is almost, or Abdi is his name on the movie, Abdi or Ishmael. Abdi is almost always restrained. In some capacity, he's always limited, either in terms of the space that he's moving in or physical capacity. He's tied or stuck somewhere. And so those restrictions were actually the factor that is dictating the kind of fighting that he would do when when both of his hands are restrained, and he would use his feet and the object most likely that he is restrained on as a fighting weapon. And it was interesting to see the speed of Iko, because that's one of his greatest strengths, the speed. It's interesting to see how fast he can be, even with the restrictions that he had, even with the restraints that he had, and he was still very quick. Second, prior to The Raid, he wasn't even acting, but he was gifted with very beautiful set of eyes, very expressive, and so there's a lot that he can tell with those eyes. And this movie actually presented him with a good amount of acting. He was able to display that. And I was so surprised that that amount of emotion flow out from his eyes. Just like in most of the movies that he has done, he doesn't talk a whole lot. I don't think that's his style as an actor. He doesn't really say a lot. But his eyes talk millions of emotions, and that was a surprise for me. That being said, the narrative is a little thicker in Headshot. It's not the same amount of story as you would find in the usual drama movies, but there's still some more narrative in there. You will find yourself making an effort to understand the characters, unlike the other movies that he has done, where you would be laid out a simple character in front of you and the rest is fighting. This one, there's a lot more pauses, a lot more narrative in between the fighting, and so there's a lot more for you to understand.
I will end this.
Next, back to fighting. It has always been my dream to watch Iko in a one-shot fighting sequence. For those of you who don't know, there's a camera, you focus it on Iko and his opponents, and you stay there. Well, you can actually move, you can move the camera around, but you can't cut. And so you can't change your point of view unless it's one fluid motion. That's my dream, to actually watch Iko in a 10-minute fighting sequence and just watch him, just watch him go. No cuts, no over editing, which happens a lot in many of the Western movies and TV shows that he has done, which he doesn't really need. He doesn't need that. You just need to watch him fight. And so that's my dream, to watch him in a one shot. This came pretty close. It's not quite, but it's very, very close. There's two sequences in there where the first part was really long one shot. and then they cut. But I was happy enough because it did not over-edit his action sequence, and so I was able to appreciate his fighting, the fighting choreography itself. So much so that I actually ended up liking two of the actors that he was fighting against. One is Sunny Pang. He played the sort of the father of Abdi, and David Hendrawan. So my new two favorite actors. I think David did very well in the action sequence. He was able to, it's very hard to match Iko's speed and just his prowess in fighting, but David was able to do it. So I will watch more of his movies. And then there's Sunny Pang. Now there's an actress there, her name is Chesley Islan. She's very, very pretty. I just wish there's more of her in the movie. I wish there's more acting from her, more fighting as well. Well, her role didn't allow her to fight, but I wish there's more acting for her. I am interested to see how she acts. I'm going to check out some of her other movies, but I like her in this. Now, there are two and a half negative things about the movie. There is this one scene in the movie. Iko was crawling under a table, and it was a very long table. And the opponent, who was holding a gun, peeked from the other side of the table. So it's one long table. And so when he peeked, naturally, what you would expect is that he would see Iko, because it's just one long table. So he would see Iko, and that would be a chance for him to shoot him. He did not. The succeeding scenes, how the scene progressed was beautiful. But that's my point. They sacrificed the narrative. I don't even know if that's the proper term, but they sacrificed that just so they can do the action sequence. So that's one part that I don't like. The next part is this scene where there was a guy pulling Iko towards him, and if he pulls Iko towards him, there's a log that can pierce the chest of Iko. So he was pulling him, but he was pulling him with one hand. And Iko seems a very smart fighter here. He can just move sideways and he would save himself. But instead, he stayed there. It was a good scene. Again, how it progressed was beautiful. But I felt like, come on, you can just turn sideways and everything would be peachy. The third is, it reminded me a little bit of Jason Bourne. It's the same premise. He was an assassin and he wanted out, but he was being pulled in. And also there's an amnesia part. So it was just a little too close for comfort for me. But I do think it's a good movie. I would encourage you to watch it. It's far from being perfect, but it is good. Just coming from a fan of Iko Uwais, I think this is a good one for him. This is a unique fighting style for him. He presented something new, something that we have not seen before from him, and that's enough. I do think that his best is yet to come. But do watch this movie, Headshot.